Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Free West Media YouTube channel. And if you haven't subscribed to us yet, please do so and don't miss out on very many of our fascinating interviews and discussions. And today I'm again privileged to be talking to South African author Nicole Barlow about an issue that surfaced over the last week or two in South Africa, the media assassination of Twatterbaas. So, Nicole, maybe you can explain to the viewers who Twatterbaas is.
Okay, so Twatterbaas is an account on X that basically specialized in highlighting issues in South Africa. And he was an anonymous account who I believe belongs to Sebastian Joost, if I'm not mistaken. I really don't want to follow the mainstream media's path in doxing this poor man. I mean, they've basically turned his entire private life upside down, which is not journalism. That is not what journalism is about. And I think my theory is that, well, I have two theories related to this particular incident and many others that the media have undertaken assassination jobs on certain individuals on social media. So I ran an experiment called hashtag Tell the Truth after the story of Twatterbaas was released by News 24 under the stewardship of Adrian Besson. Now, I use the word stewardship lightly because I don't think that that's exactly what he does at News 24. I think he's really just a stooge for globalists and for big money interests, and of course for the government. But anyway, that's another topic that we'll discuss a little later. But I went and did Tell the Truth campaign, and I basically took a large portion of Twatterbaas's posts about South Africa, such as Kill the Boer, such as farm murders, such as illegal migration, such as the court upholding Kill the Boer as protected speech, etc., etc. And I then started to tweet a campaign about telling the truth about South Africa. And of course, I copied Elon Musk in my tweets. I copied President Donald Trump, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the media, etc. And I did this over about 3 or 4 days or 5 days since the story broke. Not the slightest bit of interest by the news, not one report by the government, not one report in any major news, mainstream media news article about the fact that I was posting disinformation. I tackled the fact that farm murders are an issue, that you are more likely to be killed as a farmer in South Africa than anybody else. And also, if you look back on any of my other content, a lot of my content is even more controversial and even more out there than Twatterbaas's was. But there was not a whisper. I wasn't called for comment. Nobody wrote about what I'd written. Nobody claimed it was disinformation. Nobody claimed it was racist. Nobody claimed it was lies. Why?
Well, maybe
Only one
your
reason.
account doesn't have as much influence as Twatterbaas's, and you don't have
But
as many followers as he does.
But that's the point. I don't even think it's the followers. I've got 13,000. Twatterbaas has got 150, but Twatterbaas at one stage only had 50,000 followers when he started all of this. There's only one reason why I have never been the focus of media attention, because I am not in Elon Musk's orbit.
Okay, because Twatterbaas apparently was followed by Elon Musk, and he also
Exactly.
retweeted some of his
Exactly.
some of his postings on X about farm earners, about discrimination against minority groups, and I think that got him onto the radar screen of these media moguls in South Africa and elsewhere in the world.
Exactly. And that is why I think the public in South Africa has to absolutely realize that the media in South Africa, the mainstream media, has become the enemy of the people. And I'll tell you why. because the only reason why they were determined to destroy Twatterbaas is because he had managed to get into the orbit of Elon Musk. Had Twatterbaas continued, even if Twatterbaas had gotten to 2 million followers and never gotten into the Elon Musk's orbit and never had been followed by Elon Musk or quoted by Elon Musk or reposted by Elon Musk, nobody would have bothered. This is about the hatred of President Trump, derangement syndrome, and Musk derangement syndrome. And on top of that, it is about the message. You will follow the party line. You will follow the narrative that we as the mainstream media dictate. And if you do not, we will destroy you. Finished and clear. Because not one of the lies that he's told was about any of his posts on South Africa.
Now, are you saying that Twatterbaas posted lies or what? Or not really?
No. Well, apparently they turned around and said that he lied about his own personal circumstances and stuff like that. I don't care. I honestly don't care.
Yeah, well, he was trying to hide his identity. So
yeah, exactly. This is the thing. You need to hide your identity because we live in a country with a population of maniacs. We live in a country where politicians and people stand up and sing about killing white people, killing the Boers. I mean, can you honestly hold it against him for wanting to hide his identity? I mean, it stands to reason in South Africa that you have to hide your identity because you cannot tell the truth in South Africa if you're going to do it from a platform of yourself. I do it at great personal risk, at huge personal risk. I do it. But I'm not a danger to the mainstream media. I'm not a danger to the government because I have not reached Elon Musk's attention. The day that I do is the day that they will destroy me.
Now, do you think there was anything specific? I mean, apart from now getting the attention of Elon Musk and in a way his support because he reposted some of his posts on X and 200 million people or 200 million.
Yeah,
people.
he's got 290 million followers. Yeah.
Yes. So obviously that had a huge impact worldwide in informing people about what was the conditions in South Africa, the discrimination, the violence, the kind of ethnic hatred that that minority groups are subjected to in South Africa. But I mean, do you think what kind of postings from Twatterbaas irked them the most, would you say?
Well, I would probably say the ones where it had something to do with the Afrikaners, the fact that the government is systematically subjecting certain section of the population to oppression and basically genocide. I think the genocide narrative is the one that got to them the most because when President Trump offered the Afrikaners and the farmers special privilege, special passage into South Africa, into America and out of South Africa, the ANC couldn't have that. Oh, no. The ANC could not have this image that they had actually become worse than the government that they had spent, that they were formed to fight. So they were formed as a terrorist organization to fight apartheid. They were eulogized and lauded around the world as being this wonderful freedom-fighting organization, that they had freed the Black people in South Africa from oppression and all the rest of it, that they had, that the Mandela effect. Mandela came forward. We will be a non-racial, non-oppressive society. We'll embrace people regardless of their sex and religion and race. We are just this rainbow nation. We are wonderful. And Twatterbaas managed to destroy that. He absolutely destroyed the image that South Africa was this wonderful rainbow nation, that we all sat around the fire singing Kumbaya, we love you, one another.
Yes, and I think he also revealed specific incidents, of
Mm,
specific farm murders and incidents of violence and discrimination as well, and all the legislation. I mean, we're talking now about 142 race laws directed
absolutely.
against white people or people of European descent in South Africa, and he exposed all of that. So that's
Mm.
why he got to be an irritation to them, and so, do you think that there's some sort of collusion between, say, the ANC government or regime, as I call them?
Mm.
Because, I mean, essentially, they've turned the country into a one-party state. They've taken
Oh
over
God, yeah.
everything. Even
Kleptocracy,
private, yeah,
cuckistocracy. Yeah,
and even private business, and the major corporations. They've taken over the entire civil service. It's all what they call cadre deployment. I mean, it's all one
yeah.
party that's ruling everything. So even
Mm.
if
You
they
can't get a job in government unless you support the ANC, by the way. Unless you're
exactly,
an
you
ANC
can't
card
become a
carrying member.
judge if
Oh,
you're not an ANC card carrying
ANC
member
card
or
carrying member.
ANC supporter.
Exactly.
So it's a sort of you going to the party tribunal when you go to one of these courts, and if you see the
Exactly.
ridiculous kind of judgments and orders, that these courts dish out. I mean, for example, like Killer Boy's freedom of speech. I mean, that sort of thing. It's just completely absurd.
Yeah,
Um,
no, absolutely.
so they've turned our courts into party kangaroo, ANC party kangaroo courts.
Yeah, well, I mean, that judgment was the final proof that we needed in South Africa to tell us that the judiciary had been captured by the government was the ruling that kill the Boer, kill the farmer was protected speech. I mean, if we kind of suspected it beforehand, that's fine. We thought, well, this ruling and the accusations that, oh, when they rule in your favor, you think the justice system is great, but when they rule against you, you think it's not so great. And so we sat back and said, okay, maybe there is some truth in that. But the minute the Constitutional Court said that you may not use the K word because it is hate speech, but yet you can stand up and sing kill the Boer, kill the farmer, which is protected speech, that was the clearest indication that our judiciary has been captured.
No, I agree with you completely. So you would say there was some sort of collusion between Orion Basson and News 24, which is the biggest news website in South Africa,
Mm.
and the ANC in order to dox Twatterbaas and destroy him, photograph his house, divulge
I
personal
mean, I think they
details
even
about his
gave his
family.
wife's name. I mean, what his poor wife has got to do with this, God only knows, his parents and all the rest of it. I mean, and then they rallied people to go and put hateful messages on Google and that for their bed and breakfast. But let me just say something about this. And where the proof comes that the instruction to assassinate Protobos and destroy him came from government was the government's press release. Now, your average government employee in South Africa can barely put their 2 feet out of bed at the same time and get up and stand up 5 days, a month after something has happened. Yet within hours, literally within an hour of that story breaking on News 24, the government had issued a press statement specifically about Twatterbaas's account.
Yeah, I
That
think
tells
that's a
me,
very good point.
yeah, that tells me, sorry, dying for a breath. So that tells me that the instruction from government went to Koos Becker. Koos Becker phoned Adrian Basson and told him what to do. Now look
Now,
at
even at
who
that level, I mean, Chris Becker he's the chairman of the NASPAS process
NASPAS.
global, media group. Well, one of the probably the most valuable company in South Africa, and listed on the
Yeah,
Amsterdam Stock Exchange. It's one of
exactly.
the it's
He's
a
got shares
global
in
company,
Tencent in China. Yeah, he's a global behemoth.
and
Look at the
he's one of the
shareholders.
top five richest men in Africa. Now, you think he
Right.
would be involved in something like that? I mean,
Of course, yes, because of NASPAS's history. If you go back to Naspers' history, they came from the Afrikaner Broederbond. And they were the mouthpiece for the apartheid government.
Well, one of them.
Well,
Yeah, but one of the most, well, yeah, the others sort of went bankrupt or whatever, but
the others
they
went by the
disappeared.
wayside.
But they were the ones left standing after 1994. Yes.
Exactly. So they have a long history of being a establishment. Let me just rephrase that. An establishment mouthpiece. They have just gone from being a white establishment mouthpiece to being a black establishment mouthpiece. And that transition was very important when you understand the role that the Afrikaner Broederbond played in transitioning South Africa from white minority rule to black majority rule. And Koos Bekker has just carried on that same trajectory of controlling the narrative. We were subjected to censorship, active censorship during apartheid. We had a lot of newspapers, but they would claim that they were censored. They weren't all part of the Naspers stable. They weren't. I get that. Star, Rand Mail, Rand Daily Mail, I think it was. But they all took their cue. Many of them took their cue. And those that went independent tried very hard to tackle the government. But now the ANC government needs censorship as much as the National Party government did. And I don't know if you saw ENCA's news broadcast yesterday, day before, yesterday, I think it was, about the government wanting to control podcasters.
Oh, really?
To implement regulations.
Wow.
Implement regulations.
So you would become, controlled.
Exactly. So the media controls the narrative in South Africa. The mainstream media controls exactly what is said and how it is said and how it is portrayed in the country. And they will destroy people who they perceive are veering away from that narrative, number one. Number two, for people that they cannot control. And that is very important, is that the mainstream media in South Africa is an important tool for censorship, is an important tool for government censorship in South Africa. Because without them, we would really have free speech. We would be able to really report on what is going on in South Africa. But for Daily Maverick to have claimed that Cyril Ramaphosa had written an article that he is Person of the Year merely because of the peaceful transition of power in 2024 when the ANC lost, does not make Cyril Ramaphosa Person of the Year. He is anything but. He has overseen the destruction of South Africa. He just carried on Zuma's work. He's just more savvy, street savvy.
Oh, yes, I've also noticed that over the last few weeks they've been pushing a very radical narrative in the mainstream media. It's almost like a communist narrative, around the land issue and around the discrimination against minorities and that sort of thing. And if, for example, you mentioned Daily Maverick. I can't remember the name of the author now, but there was an article that was pushing a very radical line in there on publication the other day. So I'm asking myself, what are these people up to, and where are they taking their
Look who funds
cues
Daily
from?
Maverick, Brenthurst Foundation, etc. Globalists, establishment. Look at Naspers's main shareholders, the PIC, the pension thing from government, BlackRock, Vanguard, all globalist, almost Soros-funded and dictated. And that is why you are getting, that is why the press needs to control the passage of information. You cannot have independent people speaking directly to people outside of the country like you can on social media. The hatred for Elon Musk, having bought Twitter and having opened up Twitter to real freedom of speech and really being able to take on a certain narrative, and unless, of course, you're sort of anti-Jewish or something like that. But take on what is happening in South Africa. We can't have that because, of course, Dorsey was controlled. Zuckerberg is controlled. They're all controlled by the establishment. Musk, not as much. And they couldn't have that. They cannot have that. They are going to destroy people who have no vested interest in telling lies.
Yeah, I've often thought that if the whole kind of it was almost like a coup d'etat in 1994 when the ANC and the Communist Party took power here, and the electorate of the time they just followed the narrative in the media. I mean, there were no questions asked, no debate, nothing. And there was just this kind of demonization of the people who were asking questions and who were opposed to it for some other reason, and who wanted maybe a more federal system in South Africa that would
Exactly. Yeah,
eventually
a
protect.
devolution of power.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. A
But you couldn't
devolution
have
of
that
power
because
that
then they
would
can't
protect
control.
us from this from a one-party state, being established in the country. But they had no media whatsoever. I mean,
Yeah.
I met
Well,
people years
Naspers,
later who were telling me how they were involved in the fight for the no vote and so on, but you never heard of them. But
yeah,
now it couldn't happen because of social media and X and so
exactly.
on. They can control it only up to a certain extent. But I think what you're saying, I mean, also fits in with the notion that they're trying to discredit people,
Exactly.
independent voices. And Twatterbaas was such a voice and getting more and more powerful. And this was a way
Mm.
of discrediting him.
Exactly. This is it. They couldn't actually, because they didn't focus on anything that he actually said about South Africa. They just focused on what he'd said about his own personal life. It's never a good idea to lie. I mean, as it stands, lies will come back to bite you.
Okay, so he
Okay.
pretended
But
to be a farmer, but in fact, he
something
was,
like
yeah,
that.
he ran a guest house in Gordons
Yeah.
Bay or something
Okay.
on the Cape Coast.
Yeah.
But so what? Lots of
Yeah,
people lie
exactly. So
about
what?
their. I mean, it's not
I refuse to
essential
become
to.
mired in News 24. I refuse to give News 24 any more platform about what they did to him, which is the reason why I haven't focused on whatever it is that he said in his posts with regard to his personal life. I really don't care. I promise you, I don't care. The point is that people need to see through this. People need to see this for what it is. This was not, under any circumstances whatsoever, an attempt to to control or combat disinformation. It was under no reason for whatsoever. There was a reason for them to go after him because of any posts that he had made about South Africa and what was going on, because they were all truthful. This was about destroying somebody who had garnered the attention of an international figure such as Elon Musk, President Trump, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. And the proof of that as well is John Steenhuisen recently coming out publicly and saying there are no problems in South Africa. No such thing as farm murders, no such thing as genocide, no such thing as race-based laws. Nothing. Everything's hunky-dory. Let's all go to America arm in arm and go and tell President Trump that Twatterbaas was lying and that everything is wonderful. This is what this is all about. And this is why the government is going to come after podcasters. It is why IOL destroyed Ronaldo Gous. It is why Daily Maverick destroyed Roman Cabernac. It is why IOL, I think it was, tried to find out who Gulam was. He's got a big X account as well. Somebody must have been upset. Jacob Zuma must have become upset with something that Gulam had said.
Well,
Tried to
I was
destroy him. The man
also.
had to leave the country.
Wow. I was also
Yeah, Gulam.
involved in a thing about 15 years ago or so where there was a whole campaign to stop Steve Hofmeyr from, the singer, from performing anywhere in the country because they would actually intimidate, if his team hired a hall somewhere for him to perform, they would actually intimidate the people or threaten them and even give them death threats and stuff like that
Yeah,
and threatened to boycott them and so on and boycott the whole town to the extent that
exactly.
yeah, and then I tried to get a court order against that because this was a clear case of harassment and intimidation and so on. But I mean, the courts having been also affected by all of this, I mean, not only did we lose the case hands down, but I was almost assaulted there coming out of the court. And the media were there as well, and they were absolutely ridiculing me and Steve Hofmeyr. He wasn't there in person, but the whole thing was the notion was that if you oppose this kind of harassment from these leftist kind of anti-far people who, that would even make death threats and threats of violence, then you are, the party in the wrong. You're not allowed to do that.
Because the media is the only one that's allowed to destroy you. So if the media says that you're okay, then it's fine. But if the mainstream media is instructed to destroy somebody, they will then do so. And that is exactly what it's about. You may not defend yourself. If they want to cancel you, you must be allowed to be cancelled. And you must relish it and you must welcome it because according to the media and the government, you are bad. And that is what South Africa is now becoming programmed as. There is no such thing as free speech in South Africa. There is zero free speech in South Africa. It's a joke. Anybody who turns around and says there's free speech in South Africa, it's not, because if there was a real tolerance of free speech, Twatterbaas would still be posting now as we speak. Steve Hofmeyr would be fine. You would have won the court case. There would be no attempts to silence Roman Cabinet, Ronaldo Coase, etc., etc. There would just be no attempts. It would be like, well, whatever. You say what you like, we say what we like. But the reality is that in South Africa, if you are Julius Malema or if you are Andile, you can call for people to be killed. You can call for our pets to be killed. You can call for our children to be slaughtered and killed. And that is considered
And for our
okay
property
because the
to be
media and our property to be
expropriated.
destroyed and burnt down and expropriated and stolen, because that's the side that the mainstream media is on in South Africa.
Yeah, somehow the other day I thought to myself, this is almost like communism, but it's a different form of it. It's not as sort of, it's not as physically enclosed as communism, where they sort of send you to the gulag, right? Then you're in this kind of semi-concentration camp, prison camps sort of thing that Solzhenitsyn wrote about, or they've got the Berlin Wall and you're not allowed to cross the wall. But this is a different kind where there's still
They are
this.
psychological.
Yeah,
They
there's
are
still this
psycho.
control, this Orwellian
Yes.
control via the media. And if you step out of line, you will then be destroyed. I mean, they can do it financially. They can do it. They can attack your reputation. If your reputation, I mean, that's why we've got something like defamation or libel. If your reputation gets attacked at that level, nobody wants to talk to you. You won't get a job. Nobody will do business with you. And you'll literally starve. You'll have to change your name and go to another country. I mean, in fact, I've got an example, another example, very telling one. And that was also about 10, 15 years ago. I think they were sort of targeting me, and we had a fairly successful website and so on at the time, which was afterwards actually hacked. 20 years work sort of down the drain, just about. But there was this woman she was a lecturer in Pretoria, and she wrote something about rape in South Africa. And there was some sort of cultural element to it as well.
Are you talking
And
about Judge Janse van Vuren? Are you talking about the
no,
judge who
no,
said it?
not the judge. That
Oh,
was
right.
another case,
Okay.
very quite a similar one. But
Yeah.
this was somebody else. And she was a lecturer at the university. She wasn't a judge. But it was one sentence in an article that you could even publish in the mainstream media. But I mean, there was nothing very sort of critical about it. Just this one sentence where she implied that there was some sort of cultural element to the vast number of rapes taking place in South Africa. I mean, Okay, she didn't say that it was sort of toxic masculinity. If she'd said it was toxic
Mm.
masculinity, that would have been
Oh, they
fine.
would have loved that because
Yeah,
that feeds the
exactly.
left wings.
And
Yeah. Oh,
then
they would have loved that.
within days, a whole operation kicked in, and there was
Mm.
somebody who laid a complaint against her at the university. And she was actually then just hounded out of, I mean, also via the media, a whole lot of articles suddenly, appearing out of nowhere. And eventually she had to flee to England. She
Mm.
lost her job. She had to go and do another degree in England and spent about in and she spent another 5 to 10 years in Europe, and then eventually came back to South Africa. And she's now sort of, she's still involved in academia, but she's sort of very undercover, doesn't say anything. So she has effectively been silenced by this kind
Yeah.
of cancellation campaign.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's not controversial to say that rape and child abuse is a cultural issue in South Africa. We have a rape of a child every 30 minutes. That's it. That's a fact. It's a statistical, verifiable fact. And the majority of children that are raped are Black children. I mean, that
Well,
that sums up
yeah.
everything. So if it's not a cultural issue, rape is not a normal type of crime. I mean, when you want normal crime, robbery and that sort of thing, but there has to be a cultural element to it if you are having that level of what is actually happening. I spent almost 10 years of my life. I started two organizations dedicated to
Well, maybe
combating
we
child
should.
abuse,
That's another
and I know
topic
exactly.
that we maybe should address next time.
Yeah,
I think we're just running out of time a little bit on this system. So thank you very much, Nicole, for this
absolutely, Dan.
interesting
It's always a pleasure.
discussion. And to the viewers, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. And until next time, goodbye. Thanks, Nicole.
Okay, bye, Dan.